We still hear a lot about synodality. We haven't gotten a definition of synodality, not a concrete one, but we have heard a lot about it. It seems to include listening and being inclusive and all these other ideas that are suspiciously secular in their orientation, but aren't necessarily hostile to the Catholic faith. It's only when you start talking about devolution that you start having problems. Here, devolution we'll use, maybe decentralization is clearer. Decentralization is a word that means taking the power in the church and removing it from the hands of the few into the hands of the many. In this case, this means taking hands from the bishops, or power from the bishops, and putting them in the hands of lay people. Taking power from priests and putting them into the hands of lay people. This is something the modernists have wanted for a very long time in the church. They have wanted power taken ultimately away from the Pope and from bishops and from priests and put into hands of laity. And you've seen this happen in many places. Lay people administering parishes for some reason. Well, the reason is there are very few vocations in the church anymore. We've seen this happen, the precursor to this happen, which necessitated in the minds of the modernists this problem, which is you would see parish clusters start happening where one priest would administer up to 5 parishes in some places, which means on a Sunday, one parish priest is offering Mass at 5 locations. He has no time to get to know the lay people. He has no time to do things like hear confessions. Baptisms have to be scheduled out well in advance and may be done by a permanent deacon instead of a priest, or sometimes even a laity. And this is a fruit of the general ecclesiological reforms of the Church, the Vatican II reforms of the Church that changed its orientation and its worldview, leading to many catastrophic outcomes, including things like fewer vocations. And so now we are in a state where there are few priests in many dioceses, and some have turned to this phantom concept of synodality as the solution to the problem. And you will find no greater, more vocal supporter of this reform, so-called reform, than Cardinal Mario Grech, who was one of the heads of the Synod on Synodality. He gave an interview to the Times of Malta, where he talked about the necessity of decentralization. And he's trying to link this to the Pope. So we go here to the Times of Malta, not known to be a firebrand traditionalist outlet or by any stretch of the imagination. And we go there for this headline: Cardinal Mario Grech, lay people could run parishes instead of priests. The Maltese Cardinal speaks to Mark Lawrence Zammit in a Times Talk interview. Now, I'm not going to play the Times Talk interview here because it's a copyrighted video and you know how it goes, but they do provide a nice little summary here. And this is Times of Malta is a very professional news outlet. You should take what they say seriously here. You should think about the implications of having your parish run by laymen, the worst catechized generation in history. From the article, quote, Cardinal Mario Grech was among a handful of names mentioned in Catholic circles as being a potential successor to the late Pope Francis. In this exclusive interview recorded inside the Vatican, Cardinal Grech says he was relieved he was not the man chosen to lead the Catholic Church. Cardinal Grech sheds light on the conclave that led to the election of Pope Leo XIV and also touches on various challenges the Church faces, including the problem of many priests not wanting to become bishops. Grech, who heads the Synod of Bishops at the Vatican, said one of its main aims is to shift the Church away from clergy-heavy leadership and start to give lay people more say in decision-making in parishes, dioceses, and even the Holy See. Even if there is resistance to it among some clergy, the Church must understand that the Holy Spirit is not the exclusive domain of priests, he insisted. And while the irreplaceable ministry of priests remains vital, there is ample work that lay people can and should be doing, not merely the day-to-day running and financial administration of a parish, but even take over some rituals and sacraments. This includes a possibility of lay individuals, including women, administering parishes. Drawing on an example from Switzerland, where a couple effectively runs a parish with only infrequent priestly visits, presiding over christenings, funerals, and weddings themselves instead of the priest. Here, I'm not sure why they use, as an aside here, why they use the word christening. The word is baptism. They're presiding over baptisms, funerals, and weddings themselves instead of the priest. The shortage of vocations can be a grace from God. Some are scandalized by these words because it could prompt the church to recognize and utilize the diverse gifts present among all Christians rather than concentrating power solely within the clergy, he said. End quote. And the troubling thing about that is not merely the idea of your lay people presiding over sacraments. The troubling thing here is actually the entire framing of this issue, and that is, it's a question of power. Power, as your central focus in any of these discussions, is a Marxist construct. Marx famously changed the entire focus of the social question, how society is run, how resources are organized, everything, including the role of religion in society, as a question of power. He made power dynamics the focus. He's the one who created the oppressed versus oppressor framing. And here, Cardinal Grech is smartly not using that language, but he is using otherwise the power dynamics framing. It's core to Marxism. And he is placing this as a clergy, or ordained more broadly, versus lay people. That is, those with power versus those without power. And he invokes the Holy Spirit as his excuse for this. The vocations crisis is not a grace from God. It is a chastisement. That's what it is. Because somewhere in the last century, Catholics decided that we should be more secular, that we should adopt the logic of the secular world and start playing fast and loose with morality. And we saw this go all the way up to synods and, yes, even a certain council from the last century, where we decided we needed to get with the times of a godless world, thinking it would help us to spread some phantom version of the gospel a little more easily. And unfortunately, that's not what happened. The immediate effect was many men left the priesthood. Many men and women left the religious life immediately. The numbers have never recovered. Fewer enter into seminary now than ever before. Same with religious life. We sometimes celebrate what look like really good vocations numbers, especially among seminarians, but the best vocations numbers today pale in comparison to average numbers from last century. Nobody wants to talk about that or the implications of it. Instead, especially among the bishops, they look for a new orientation for how to fix the problem. The problem can only be fixed by getting on our knees and repenting. Living a Catholic life. It doesn't mean tossing out the comforts of the modern world per se, but it does mean become a praying and fasting people, at least grappling with the sins in our life. And yes, talking to our neighbors, as uncomfortable as that is, about Jesus Christ and his church, and why they should seriously consider joining his church, even in a time right now where things are in chaos. Uncomfortable words to hear, I'm sure. That's Cardinal Mario Grech, and I'm very happy he did not become Pope. Curious what you think about this, though, so let me know in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So, sharing this on social media, that helps too. And if you've ever thought about supporting the work we do here, ever turn to tradition, there are options in the description box below. All of them asked for by people who view this work on a regular basis. It does help keep these daily messages coming. And thanks to those longtime patrons who continue to support the work here. It is appreciated. As always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.